Alright, hey guys, it's me again, and today we're going to be talking about Lavos, and Lavos, while he isn't good, he's not as bad as Zaku or Bone Widow at launch, and he really lacks like a use case, honestly, and because he has a cooldown system, his kills per second sort of for like endurance runs and whatnot, that he can't keep up with normal Warframes. On top of that, his abilities take a lot of setup to get the most out of, so it's just, you can't use him on bosses because of his status nature. There's just a lot of things he can't do. Like the only other use case you can kind of see for him, right? Like inside of maybe co-op, other than like say a not great room nuker, is a support frame where you infuse viral into Viral Rush and just spread viral everywhere. But range only affects the amount of vials you have and not their actual AoE. And you can also stop it early. But yeah, that's not amazing. But before that, let's just show you the build so you guys know what we're dealing with. The best in slot aura for him is Speed Holster by far, because he's going to be switching weapons a lot, and he's primarily going to want to use status spreader weapons. And because of that status spreader weapons exist, his 2 is completely useless. It's just a movement tool. It doesn't really do anything else other than like keep the enemies in place because of the cold procs, but it's just not that good because we have status spreader weapons like the Cedo, like the Kuva nuker, like the Muta Cernos, like the Tauren, that are just better than this because you can get 2 elements on this max. And it's only technically 1 because your infused damage type, where you combined your button presses to get like a damage type, that is on top of the base element. So you can get viral cold on this, you can get corrosive cold, or magnetic or blast cold, or whatever. But you can't get more than that. As I'll quickly demonstrate here, so I can go, say, Toxin and Electricity that gives me Corrosive, but I cannot add any more elements into that. And I also can't, like, get rid of or change the elements again once I've selected on a combination element. But you can hold 2 buttons at the same time to quickly get an element. So that's something that's nice about his passive. But honestly, if you're using a status spreader weapon, you're not going to use his passive, and you're not going to use his 2. So status spreader weapons are the way to go. That's why I'm using Speed Holster to quickly switch between those. As well as we have health, we have adaptation, but I'm on the fence about this mod being here because he's actually quite tanky without this, I feel. But obviously can't abuse like shields or whatnot. I was going back and forth between this and natural talent, because natural talent actually like helps him out a lot. And what I have here is sort of like a balanced build where I have base strength, because strength is actually the dump stat on him. You don't really need it that much because he does a lot of damage without it. And even with negative strength, he still does great damage. But what you really want here is range, to cover more area with his abilities. And you want to keep your duration positive. Now the reason you want to keep this positive is because this not only affects his abilities, but it also affects the weapons he's holding, which is terrible. So you have to keep this positive. And then I have efficiency, which people have been throwing away as the dump stat. But honestly, I think efficiency is very, very valuable. Because it only really affects his 3, which every time your thrower ability electrocutes an enemy, that reduces your cooldown by 1.75 seconds, right? And you can actually run into a lot of scenarios that I've noticed is that you can get your cooldown for your 4 back immediately. This has a 30-second cooldown because of there's just been a group of enemies, and you throw that into there, and you immediately get this back with max efficiency. So I think this is great. Great to have max efficiency here. But honestly, anything lower than max efficiency is not that good. Now, you can also double tap it to hold it in place, but you never want to hold this in place. And the other thing this does is let's say I kill a bunch of enemies. Right, so here's some ammo and here's some health here. If I cast my 3 over it, it turns them into their universal variants, which is honestly better than Protea's Dispensary. But if you think about it, why the fuck does Lavos give the Cedo ammo mutation? That makes no sense. As far as Arcanes here, I have Arcane Ultimatum for more armor and Arcane Aegis for better shield regen. But honestly, these can be switched out. Another thing you can go if you're going for a melee focused build is Arcane Trickery, because his 1 does open enemies up to finishers, as I'll show you here. Let's go with a Ballista. Just so I can show you real quick. They're staggered. Open them with the finishers, they're gone. So running like, say, Arcane Trickery, or say the Skiajati can also help his survivability by a lot. But I just want you guys to know that that's an option. Now, his weapons are actually really important, but I'm running the Cedo because like this basically takes the need for using my 2 ever. And I'm running Radiation Viral on it with a bunch of status duration, as well as the Kuva nuker with gas magnetic, and a bunch of multi-shot and status increasing stuff. And I'm running Telos Boltus with my primary hybrid build with the elements that I don't have on my previous 2 weapons on this. With Lavos, Lavos can hit millions of damage with his 4. And I'm going to show you again some Exo Gokstad officers. So there's 20 of them, and they're going to summon the robots, so that's like 40 enemies. Hit them with the Cedo, quickly switch to the Kuva nuker. Now my frame rate's going to tank, and that's the thing with Lavos. But he vaporizes them. Now, the hitbox on his 4 is a little jank. You guys can saw this. Sometimes they survive, and most of the time they don't. But when they do survive, it's really annoying to not have the extra bonus damage applied to your 4 when it should. But basically, every time an enemy is affected by a status proc, that doubles the damage of your 4, and it continuously doubles, alright, until you get like every sort of status that you can get, and it results in it doing very minuscule damage, you see, without any elements, to millions of damage that I showed previously. I also value, let me show you how much I value efficiency. So, see, my cooldown's very long. I cast my 3 in this group of enemies, and it's already back. It only really hit a few enemies before it went back and went all the way through those guys. But I find that getting my abilities twice as often from cooldowns with my 3 is very valuable, and will sort of keep up his kills per second. But if you whiff that, say you missed that or something like that, and then you have all your cooldowns like sort of going, the next thing you should be doing is meleeing. So let's say I have all my cooldowns, they're all going, right, so all my cooldowns are off. I don't really know what to do. The next thing I should be doing is grouping all these enemies up and meleeing them with condition overload. But as you guys can notice, this setup tanks your frame rate. So if you're a performance-minded player like I am, I like having very high frame rates over very high fidelity of graphics, Lavos is going to be kind of a problem for you. So honestly, instead of him having a status spreader tool here, he should really have a grouping tool, because that would help Lavos out a lot. I mean, the whole reason I run the Telos Boltus is it's just a free grouping tool for the most part. I know you can do that with Operator, Arcanes, and whatnot, but if it was just baked into Lavos' kit, it would be a lot easier, and I'd get a lot more use out of his too. My Discord has already been theorizing about like helminthing this ability off for Larva or Ensnare, or better yet, helminthing Ophidian Bite off for something like Condemn, because that will give him like shields, and he can abuse shields, and that also gives him hard CC, which he doesn't have any of that in his kit. He has very soft CC with his 2, but it's not hard CC like Condemn. So if you're going to helminth stuff off, that's what I'd recommend, because you're not really going to get use out of his passive if you're using any status spreader weapon on him. So yeah, Lavos is in a weird spot. Like, he's not good at really anything, honestly, and his cooldown system kind of sucks. It just makes him objectively worse than other Warframes as far as nuking goes, or even spreading status goes. So he can do those things, it's just not very well, and that's strictly because of his cooldown system. I really wish his 2 was just a grouping tool instead of a status spreader ability, because again, status spreader weapons exist, we have a lot of them, and why not use them? And that takes off a lot of the setup with Lavos. So I just don't understand why his 2 is not a grouping tool. Anyway guys, that's all for me. I want to thank you guys for watching, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.